I feel like the Rebbe, with this answer, the Rebbe kind of made me a spitz. Because that was it, That's it. The Rebbe is the way. And really, as a kid, when I got this letter, I was so thrilled, and then I went to Chabad Yeshiva and the whole thing, but always felt, I hope I embodied this value, but at least for sure I got it, like from the Rebbe as an answer, and all my life I'm trying to live with it.
If you've been enjoying this podcast, please like and subscribe so that others can enjoy it as well. In addition, if you've benefited in any way from Among Chassidim podcast and would like to give something back, you can do so today at derher.org/donate. I'm Yassi Kamen. Welcome to Among Chassidim by Derher, an ongoing farbrengen about life as a chassid, our vibrant connection with the Rebbe, and inspired living shaped by the way he teaches us each and every day. This episode is dedicated to Nishmas Harav Sadia ben Rav Mordechai Olav Shalom Dahan and the Refuah Shlema for Chana Bas Nechama Dina by Shaul and Shendi Dahan. Shalom Aleichem, Rabbi Asi Spiegel. How are you?
Baruch Hashem, Aleichem Sholem.
Okay, thank you very much for taking the time to talk. And I hope it will be a benefit for myself and for all the listeners and those that are watching.
Bezrat Hashem, thank you. Thank you for having me.
Okay, so I think the way I would like to begin is that we actually had it once printed in Derher, I believe. We did an interview with you regarding a certain event. But I think the way it began is you discussed a little bit, if I remember correctly, that you discussed a little bit of the background of where you came from. I know you wrote to the Rebbe at one point, and I understand that you weren't born into Lubavitch. It's something that you acquired, and there's some background and involvement of the Rebbe with that. So maybe you can share some Rashi Prakim about that.
Okay, so Baruch Hashem, I grew up in Israel to a mother and Orthodox family, what's called over here Kippa Sruga. And my father, Zol Razai Gesund, is a big Torah scholar. So he gave me solid education. And as a kid, I was interested in, Rabbonim and learning and things like that. So, but really, we didn't have any connection that I know of with the Rebbe or with Lubavitch. Later in life, I discovered my grandfather had some connections, but when I grew up, I knew nothing of it. And my connection started when I was about 12 years old. And I heard about the Rebbe a little bit more, but I ended up, I don't know if that was the first thing, but one of the first things that happened was I saw a movie about Tishrei in 770 when I was about 12 and a half years old. So when I saw that, it made a big impact on me. And I started connecting with Chabad House in my local town, Petach Tikva in Israel. And I ended up getting a letter from the Rebbe for the Bar Mitzvah. I wrote the Rebbe a letter, he wrote me back. And I went to Chabad Yeshivas at 15 years old. And that's also when I went the first time for Tishrei, when I was 15 years old. That was Tishrei Tovshin Mem Hey. Then I came Memvov, again for Tishrei. And then mid Memvov, between Purim and Pesach, I actually came to learn by the Rebbe. I came for Pesach, I stayed in Morristown, was there for about a year and a year and a half. And then in 770. So basically I was in 770 from mid Memvov, and Mem Zayin, Mem Ches, Mem Tes, Nun. And in later years, I was also on Shlichus as a Bocher, but I was there in and out for different farbrengens. So that's just my general background of where I come from and approximate years of where I had the amazing miracle in my life that I was spent a few years by the Rebbe.
Amazing. So I have a few questions about this. Number one, this movie that was shown, this was like, where do you see this? What was the context of it? I'm just curious.
So the movie that I saw, Levi Yitzchak Freidin, was one of the big photographers of the Rebbe. He used to, when he came back from Tishrei, in those years, those the mems. Okay, so when he would come back to Israel, he would walk around different towns and show a movie of Tishrei. It was reels, it was like an old style movie, but it was amazing to see. And he showed it in some hall in Petach Tikva, in where I lived. And somehow I got the notice about it, and I went to see it because I was already curious more about the Rebbe by that point, and it blew my mind. That movie basically, changed my life because I saw it and I couldn't believe, just try to imagine. I'm 12 and a half years old. I'm Kippa Sruga kids from Petach Tikva. The shuls that I've seen in Tel Aviv, Petach Tikva, Yerushalayim, wherever I was, I've never seen anything even remotely close to what is going on in 770. So as a kid, when I saw it, I got so excited. The dancing and the Rebbe is like, making everybody jump up and down. And yeah, that kind of got me. The reaction of my parents when I told them about it, it was also the next thing, which they didn't really like it so much, which made me even more interested. So that was like my beginning, or one of the angles of it. Yeah.
Okay. And I've always heard about Levi Yitzchak Freidin bringing the videos back to Eretz Yisroel to show people, but I don't know. I wasn't familiar with your story, and that there's, that was the catalyst to what brought you to the Rebbe. That's pretty amazing. There was also, I think I remember that there was interaction and answers you had from the Rebbe before you came.
Right.
Am I correct?
So,
That was afterwards?
No, it's around the same time. This is all, prior to my bar mitzvah. What happened was I started going to Chabad house in my town. There's another piece of it, which honestly I don't even remember what came first, this movie or whatever I'm going to tell you right now. But I, as a kid, no, this definitely came first. This part I'm going to tell you is that I, as a kid, maybe when I was 11 or so, or maybe before, I went with my parents to what's called in Israel Shavua Sefer, the week of the book, which in Israel nowadays it's all over Israel. Back then it was mostly Tel Aviv and Jerusalem. There was like big book display of all the publishers of Israel in town square in the middle of Tel Aviv for a week, and you would walk around and just see the different new books and publications. So my parents took me there as a kid, and Chabad Kehos, many Wolf from Kfar Chabad, they were always there. Apparently the Rebbe asked to be there. So one of those years when we went there as a family, we stopped by the Chabad booth, and they gave me Talks and Tales in Hebrew, Sichot Lanoah. And so after I read it at home, when we came back home, I asked my dad to get me a subscription for it because I liked it. And a couple of years later, my dad told me that there's a new volume of Talks and Tales that came out, and if I want to buy it, Chabad is the publisher, and he told me there's a new Chabad house in town, so maybe you want to go to Chabad house and buy this new volume of Talks and Tales. When I went to Chabad house, this was around the time that the Rebbe started the Mivtza Sefer Torah for children, or Tzivus Hashem in general, Tzivus Hashem, and then Sefer Torah L'Yaldei Yisroel. So I was still before Bar Mitzvah, and I walked into Chabad house. I walked in for this book, for this Sefer, Sichot Lenoah, but there I come, and the shliach there, his name was Binyamin Rabinovich, the guy who managed the place, and he told me, did you hear? The Rebbe started this whole new thing with the Sefer Torah, and he plugged me into it, and I got involved, and I got kids in my school to purchase letters. So that was the other piece that I said. I don't remember which one came before, the movie or Mivtza Sefer Torah, maybe it came around the same time. And so this is before my bar mitzvah, a couple of months before my bar mitzvah, and I'm getting really into Chabad, and my parents don't really like it so much. And then one day, my father had a conversation with me about buying a jacket or a suit for the bar mitzvah, and I asked him, "Can we buy a black suit?" Which I wanted because I was becoming like more frum, Hasidic, whatever you want to call it. And my father is like I said before, he's a Talmud Chacham, he's a Talmud professor, he's a very learned person. So when I told him I want a black suit, he asked me to get him a sefer from the library, a sefer called Kaf HaChaim, and he opened the sefer and he shows me, and it shows me that it says that you're not allowed to wear black on Shabbos. This is a sefer from like 200-300 years ago. Rabbi Chaim Falaji was a big rabbi in Izmir, in Turkey. So I saw it, and what can I tell my father? He's showing me I can't wear black on Shabbos. So I told him, what about the Rebbe? I mean, if you can't wear black on Shabbos, how come the Rebbe wears black? So my father, brushing me off, sort of, told me, that's a question for the Rebbe, not for me, So I was thinking to myself, I didn't tell him anything, but I was thinking, oh man, that's a good idea, asking the Rebbe something, like he gave me the idea, So
Ask
I
him.
did. Yeah, so I did. So I wrote the Rebbe a letter and describing to him this debate I had with my father. I remember I sat with the sefer and I copied the lashon of the quote, the exact quote from the sefer Kaf Chaim, and I sent it to the Rebbe. And before I closed the letter, this idea came to me. The bar mitzvah invitations were already there on my table. And I was thinking, what? Why don't I send the Rebbe an invitation to the bar mitzvah? I had no idea it's a Chassidim, I was like a kid, like, okay, let's send him my invitation. And I did. And sure enough, about 2 months later or so, I got a letter from the Rebbe back, which I didn't expect. I wrote the Rebbe a letter, like a kid writing a letter, the havdil, to the president. You like write a letter, and like, the president has time for me, You give it a shot, but it's not like you're waiting for the answer. So, but the answer did come, and the Rebbe, I was zoichet to get from the Rebbe a letter for the bar mitzvah, Yirotzen, Mashem Yisborach, the official bracha that the Rebbe, kind of a standard lotion that the Rebbe sent everybody, and the Rebbe signed it, and then there's a nun base in the letter. The toichen of it was published already in the Kotesiches and in other places, and basically Rebbe answered that there's different minhagim, and I should look up in the Sforim the different minhagim, and then he finishes it saying, "Ve'anu en lanu ela minhag nesi doreinu hu kvod kedushas mori v'chami admor." In other words, the Rebbe is not giving me an answer, and he said, "Look it up in the Sforim," but the real answer is, "Ve'anu en lanu ela minhag nesi doreinu." So sometimes
that we only have the minhag of
like you're asking me why I'm wearing black, because the Rebbe wore black,
Because
the Filik Rebbe, right? So when I, in different occasions, in Fabrengens with Bochim or whatever, when I retell that story, I always say, and I'll say to you as well, I feel like the Rebbe, with this answer, the Rebbe kind of made me a spitz. Because that was it, That's it. The Rebbe is the way. And really, as a kid, when I got this letter, I was so thrilled, and then I went to Chabad Yeshiva and the whole thing, but always felt, I hope I embody this value, but at least for sure I got it, like from the Rebbe as an answer, and all my life I'm trying to live with it,
Right. Okay. Shakech. So you go to Chabad Yeshivas in Eretz Yisroel, and then you said the first time you came to the Rebbe was Tavshem Memhei for Tishrei. So what was that like? Actually, I'm pretty sure what we interviewed in the Deher was about Rosh Hashanah Memhei. I'm pretty sure that's what it was. So maybe you can maybe you can share a little bit about that.
Right. So it's a bit challenging to try to capture the experience of coming to the Rebbe for the first time, but yeah, it was unbelievable. Let's just say, I'll tell you like this. When I came for the first time, I remember within a few days of being there, I remember thinking, "There's no way I'm going back to Israel. There's no way I'm going back." Um, I mean, I did after realizing that this would be way too much for my parents. Especially back then. 1985. My parents weren't even in America then, so the world was very different than today, and I felt like saying to them that I'm going to stay would really be shvira sakelim completely. But I'm saying it to share the sentiment. It was basically a dream come true, just to come to see the Rebbe, to be there in 770. Whatever I was dreaming it's going to be like was much better. And you know, it's and also I'll say this, and I want to be very honest about this. Since today I farbring often in Israel with young, with bochrim, with medlach, and a lot of times I don't want to go too strong talking about those memories, because sometimes I feel that people, it gives them a little bit chalishus adas, it gives them a little bit of I don't know how to translate it exactly, like it's people are having sometimes a hard time hearing how fantastic it was, because it's unfortunately it's an experience, it's a state of mind. It's not available today, especially at least not in that way, begashmias as it was. So I'm just saying, like sometimes I mamish in fabringas with people, I see it. Sometimes I talk about it, and I see the faces are starting to go a little. So listen, it was something that is impossible to describe, obviously. The level, I would just say this, that I don't know if being alert, I don't know if that's the right word to describe like let's say when the Rebbe would be in the room, okay, once the Rebbe enters, whether it's mincha, ma'ariv, farbrengen, whatever, the Rebbe is the Rebbe came out, right? Once we were the presence of the Rebbe, everybody's alertness level, like the reality becomes something that's different. It's like a different level of energy in the room. This is, I'm not saying that the Rebbe is not talking yet, there's no fabring, and it's just like the Rebbe is here. Was a very, very different feeling, and the let's say level of optimism, let's say, okay, being besimcha, being hopeful, being thinking, we're going towards Mashiach and everything is going to be good, or whatever it is. I'm just having a good day. It's like I'm happy to be here, right? When the Rebbe is around, all those things, for me at least, I'm speaking about my experience. All those things were a given. That life is amazing, and I know what I want, and it's all good. It's just incredible, because you're extremely affected by the fact that the Rebbe is there. So, of course, if there was singing or simcha or moments like that, it was just like something else, basically.
Okay. And that Tishrei at that time, you're able to, like on the Fabringens, you're able to understand the Rebbe, or it was just the Arum at that point?
That's a good question. It's one of my favorite topics to tell people about what was really going on in Fabringen, because it wasn't always so simple to really understand what's going on in real time. Now, again, this is obvious, but I do want to emphasize it, that I'm really speaking extremely from my own perspective. So I'm speaking really. I'm going to explain it really strongly, but this is what I felt. I don't know. Other people could feel other things. So for me, it's like this. I really did learn Yiddish as much as I could. And obviously, I really wanted to listen and hear Farbrengen and focus and as much as possible. Since, I was in 770 for several years, so I have, different memories of different angles in 770 where I got myself a better place. Obviously, the first Tishrei, I came in as an Israeli bocher without any mishpoche or any relatives in Crown Heights or anybody. Nobody got me a better place. I had to earn it on my own. I mean, I had friends who gave me tips, but that was it. There's no good uncle who has like a little place for you under his bench or something. So obviously the first Tishrei was challenging in terms of also the second Tishrei was challenging in terms of being able to be close, or being able to hear. Did hear the Rebbe, did get some parts of the Farbrengens, but I can't say that in those years, in those occasions of Tishrei, I was able to fully be there. In later years, I got myself better places in 770, and even then, obviously, when it a good place or when it was a quieter Farbrengen, sort of, not so packed as Tishrei, still, even if you could hear the Rebbe, now begins the real work of holding with him, and that was always a challenge, But first Tishrei was pretty hard, but there were some obviously vochedik, weekday Farbrengens. Those were obviously easier, but also on Shabbos and Yom Tov, you could get some of it at least, But for sure, I can't say that I got all of it. Not even in later years.
Right. Is there anything you want to share about the Tishrei Memhei Memvav in particular before we move on to when you actually arrived to stay?
Well, I'll say two things. Number one, what I meant before when I said that this is a favorite topic of mine is to say what's the favorite part of it is that a lot of times I tell people that even though I think that a lot of people, I don't want to say most because that would maybe sound too extreme, but certainly many people that were in Farbrengen were not able to either hear very well, or even if they heard well, were not able to hold cup with the Rebbe. It was a very challenging, intellectually challenging thing to do. Nevertheless, even though you were in moments that you didn't hear or didn't understand, you were glued to your place nonetheless. It's a very important thing to understand that in Farbrengen, there were two things going on at the same time. One thing is trying to understand what the Rebbe is saying. If you could do that, that's fantastic. But even if you couldn't, the experience was so strong, you could stand there for hours looking at, and many people did. And they'll tell you about it too. That they knew that they don't really understand, or maybe they understood the kasha, and then their minds flew away. Still, just standing and looking at the Rebbe, it was like a magnetic type of experience. That's what I'm saying. It's different than what we know today, because today I can't think of anything similar that anybody would be in presence of somebody speaking. Okay, 10 minutes, 15 minutes. If I don't hear so well, I don't understand. Okay, have a nice day. How long can I do it? But with the Rebbe had many participants who were there just to see it or to feel it was already a lot. If you could even understand what he's saying, wow, that's even better. So that's just to explain that. About particular moments in Memhei and Memvov. It's like I have so many years altogether mixed in. I would say that Memvov, I do remember, there's a moment I remember very, very strongly, is in Tishrei Memvov, when the Rebbe got up to dance at the end of Rosh Hashanah Farbrengen, at the end of the Farbrengen of Toshin Memvov. Second year I was there. I'm pretty sure that's what it is. I don't think it's Memhei, I think it's Memvov, but the Rebbe said to sing a Nigun of Simchas Torah and the end of the Farbrengen, and right away, he might have even started. No, I don't think he started himself then. He didn't. I think he said to say a Nigun of Simchas Torah. They started singing, and within shortly after, the Rebbe got up to dance. Now, I think the Rebbe didn't get up in Farbrengen to dance, probably for about 8 years or so. There was like a long gap of since the last time that happened. So I didn't see Tovshin Memhei in Tishrei, and also prior to that, in the Yomanim and all that, there wasn't anything about it. And all of a sudden, the Rebbe got up in the end of the Farbrengen. It was Tishrei Farbrengen, Rosh Hashanah Farbrengen, and he gets up with a Simchas Torah Dikenigan unexpectedly, and I just remember how the whole 770 just like, wherever I was standing, I was on the floor within a second, and then I had to regain back my place to see the rest of it. So that's a strong memory from then. And
I thought that was Memhei, but
could
maybe
be,
right.
could be.
Yeah.
I like I said, maybe it is Memhei, so maybe it is, But that I remember strongly. The whole Tishrei. I mean, there's everything is special. But if you ask me, if you stump me on that, this is what I pull out that moment in Rosh Hashanah.
And also Memvav Simchas Torah. There's also
Right.
a lot of it.
Right. Simchas Torah Memvav. So Simchas. So first of all, Simchas Torah. If you ask about Tishrei, then obviously Simchas Torah was the highlight of the whole year in terms of the Rebbe's simcha. But it's not just that there's a kofes and the Rebbe is making with the hand. It's Poshut the Rebbe's face when he walked into a kofes, when he walked into 770 and Simchas Torah. It's just like those are things that are a little bit hard to say because it's just like it's like feelings and memories and how can you describe the Rebbe's face exactly? But it was an obvious thing. Like you saw the Rebbe walking in. There is I think you say in Yiddish like "uvgelebt." It's like an expression like I don't know how you say it exactly, but it's just you see the Rebbe more sort of open, like looking at the people more, or just like a different aura coming out of him. So Simchas Torah was bichlal a different level, and I think a lot of people know that one of the most challenging farbrengens was Leil Simchas Torah, when the Rebbe wanted everybody who could to go to Talucha, and but at the same time there was a farbrengen also. The Rebbe started farbrengen around 9 o'clock or so. Everybody went to Talucha around 6 or 7, or depending where you were going. But the first year that I was there, everybody told me that Rebbe wanted people to go far away and don't be a smart boy and try to catch the farbrengen. So I did, But then in Memvov, the second time I was there, I just remembered the when I came back, Memhei, and hearing the description of the farbrengen, and I came already at the very end of it. So Memvov was when the Rebbe turned the cup around. Simchas Torah Memvov, right?
Upside down.
Upside down, right? Upside down. And I mean, before that, there was a whole sicha about the shluchim. There was a whole farbrengen, but the cup. When the Rebbe turned the cup around, so that year I did go to Talucha to a closer area because I did made a cheshbon how I'm gonna go. I'm gonna go to Talucha, but I'm also gonna catch some of the farbrengen.
You became smart.
Yeah, I was a little bit of a smart boy, I guess. Not completely, because I did go to Talucha, but I also wanted to catch the farbrengen. And the thing was also that in this farbrengen, if you came earlier and you chopped yourself a place, then you would just stay there for the duration of the farbrengen. Well, in other farbrengens, there were people have mokum kavua and they have their own place, and it was a little bit challenging to find a place to stand. But in that farbrengen, since it was already starting as chaos, so wherever you went, you could stay there. So I came and I stayed. I stood pretty close to the Rebbe, and then when the Rebbe, talked about turning the cup upside down, and people were, that farbrengen once. The Rebbe basically held the becher upside down in his hand the whole time. And he started, in the beginning he said L'chaim and he turned it around. Then people started singing, and then the Rebbe started do with the hand holding the becher. So since the Rebbe was holding it, and everybody else who had a cup that it was done with, he would also hold it upside down. And other people who had bottles of wine or mashke, whatever they had, they also held it upside down. So try to imagine it like that. The whole 770 is holding the cups upside down. And I don't remember, like 5-10 minutes into it, something like that. shockingly, the Rebbe looked at me and he told me to say l'chaim. It was the motion that the Rebbe did back then was he was holding the cup, in one hand, and then he went like this. So I got like a look like this from the Rebbe, like, where's your l'chaim, So the Rebbe never asked me to say l'chaim, before or since, it was just like my moment in life, But the problem was that there was no more l'chaim in 770. I mean, 10 minutes ago, the Rebbe already said to turn it upside down, which means basically to empty all the vessels. And the Rebbe said a sikha back then, that this was related to the Rambam, why the menorah, the goblets, the gvim are upside down. So because you have to empty them and give it to the world. So it took me like a little while turning around and figuring out that there's no way I'm going to score l'chaim right here, and leaving outside and trying to get l'chaim from outside wasn't a good idea, because I would never be able to come back where I was standing, So, and by the time I was figuring my options, the nigun ended and the fabringen ended, and the only other time for me to say l'chaim to the Rebbe, I mean, some people said during a kofis, but for me in a kofis, I was like way up there in the ceiling, so there was no way to say l'chaim to the Rebbe. The next opportunity would be the next day for bringing Yom Simchas Torah, and lo and behold, as they say, I come to this Farbringen, and the second that I raised my cup, which was basically the first nigun, the Rebbe said a sicha, then they started a nigun, and I'm raising my cup. The Rebbe looked in another direction, but as soon as I raised my cup, the Rebbe looked at me and said l'chaim to me. So that was like a very special moment in my life where mamish felt it. Like the Rebbe basically knows it all and he feels it all. And even though it's bochrim in 770, we all believed it. Obviously, that was like the default setting, that that the Rebbe knows who you are and he knows what you're thinking, and but it was with you don't have on a regular basis a proof for it. It's like you believe it. In my time, there was no personal yichidus anymore. So we didn't really have a chance. I missed that. People who came a couple of years before me, they had some yichidus. Even though it was already those years, it was very short and everything, but still, you came to the Rebbe's room, So we didn't have that already in Memhei, Memvov. It wasn't. So feeling it, I owe l'chaim to the Rebbe from last night, and it turns to me right away and gives it to me. After, you can imagine how I felt in between the time that the Rebbe told me to say l'chaim until he actually did the next day. I felt like basically the biggest shlimazel in the world. The Rebbe asked you to say l'chaim, and there's no mashkin 770. I mean, how likely is that? But that's what happened. So I felt pretty bad, and the Rebbe, I'm sure, felt it. So it just gave me a quick l'chaim, and it was a major feeling of, the Rebbe is here, he knows you, he knows what's going on.
Wow. Okay, thank you for sharing that. So, Memvav, you went back, and then just remind me, you said you came back to Marstown.
So Memvav, I was there for Tishrei. Then I went back to Israel. Now, like I said, and this is real, I'm not playing it up or anything, but really, the first Tishrei I came, the second Tishrei I came, I really wanted to stay. Mitzidi, the way I felt, and I was ready to do it, but there was no way to do it unless I would really, cause a big issue with my parents. I was 15 years old, 16 years old. So after Tishrei Memvov, when I came back to Israel, I started already doing Tishrei, but even when I came back, I started writing the Rebbe like every few weeks. I'm writing a pan. I'm asking for a bracha, that some miracle should happen, that I should be able to come learn by the Rebbe. This was the only thing on my mind, and the miracle did happen. My parents decided, my father's a professor, and decided to go on a sabbatical year to Toronto. So because of that, and somehow, don't ask me how, but somehow I managed to convince my parents that, I'm going to miss them so much. I'm not going to be able to stay in Israel for a whole year, So they told me, so what do you suggest? I said, well, Toronto, New York, it's not so far away. I should go to yeshiva in New York, and then I could come visit you once in a while. And somehow they went for it, and they even helped me because, back then, I don't know how it is today, but back then, if you were, let's say, a bocher in yeshiva in Lud, in Eretz Yisroel, and you would come to Ole Torah during Tishrei, many bochrim came to check out, maybe they could stay in the yeshiva, but there was an agreement between the yeshivas that you could only learn in Ole Torah if your yeshiva from Israel sends them a letter that they are asking for you to learn there. It wasn't so easy to get this document, but here my parents were going to a sabbatical, so this was like an official thing. They came to the Anola, and then I got a letter, so I had no problem. It was like a smooth ride for me. I got to New York, and basically, Iyar Memvov, I came for Pesach. So Pesach, I was, in 1414 with the older Bochrim, and then after Pesach, I went to Morristown. So I was in Morristown for half Memvov and Memzayin, but every Shabbos I was in Karnitz, I was never
Every single Shabbos.
What?
You never a Shabbos in Morristown?
Never. I was never there for Shabbos, not yet. So, and during the week, I'll just say, during the week, sometimes there were surprise Farbringans. Big Farbringans, obviously, everybody went to New York for Farbringen. Sometimes I remember surprise Farbringans that we were debating, like, should we listen on the hookup? Or should we go to New York? And you go very fast, an hour and 20 minutes, whatever it was, and at least you catch the second part of the Farbringen in 770, so that's, I think, that's what we usually did,
You were from that camp that decided to go.
Yeah, but I'll tell you, I remember this maybe once or twice because I was from the camp that if there was even a chance that I would be a Farbringen, we would already be in New York,
Right.
Something like that, I came for the Rebbe, I didn't come to sit in Morristown or any place like that, but there's no other way.
Why did he go to Morristown and not to Ole Torah?
So that's funny you ask, because my Israeli friends who were then in Kvutze, right? So that Pesach, I was thinking, should I go to Ole Torah or should I go to Morristown? So they told me, listen, if you're going to go to Ole Torah, then you're going to be in 770 all day. You're never going to learn anything. But if you go to Morristown, at least during the week, you'll learn, and then you come for Shabbos. So, I don't know if that's what really happened in reality, but at least in theory, that was the idea,
Yeah.
So, and then Mem Zayin, I basically chose not to go on shlichus as a bocher. I don't know if this was the right thing or not, but that's what I chose because I wanted to be, I wanted to be by the Rebbe. So to me, it was so hard for me to even get there from Israel with my parents, the whole thing. And then everybody wants to go on shlichus. I was like, you know what, I'm in 770, so I kind of stayed, Mem Zayin, Mem Ches, Mem Tes. I was in 770.
So you went straight from Mars in the 770. Boom.
Yeah, basically, yeah, kind of like.
So you were there. So you were there. Hey Tavis, Tavshim Mem Zayin.
I was actually. Somebody called me today in Israel to ask me to Farbring somewhere. So one of the questions was, "You were there at Tavis, right?" I said, "I was." Okay, let's do it. They're looking for somebody who was there.
Yeah. So it's almost Hey Tavis. So maybe you could talk about that a little bit.
Oh yeah, for sure. Well, okay. Well, Dida Notzach is definitely one of the highlights of the years that I was there. No question about it. I would say, listen, the story begins when I was still in Israel. In the summer of Memhei, I was in yeshiva in Kiryat Malachi, Nachlas Chabad, and I remember really, very strongly this memory that we were told that the Rebbe is going to speak about something very, very important on Yud Beis Tammuz. The reason we heard that is because, the Rebbe already had a guch for Echidus before Yud Beis Tammuz, and he told them that he'll speak about it on Yud Beis Tammuz. So, but we had no idea speak about it, we didn't know what it means. And we were young Bachrim, so we weren't in the know of really the insides of Lubavitch, what's going on. So we just knew Makifdik. So as Bachrim, we were certain, not certain, I wouldn't say certain, but we were thinking that probably there's going to be a new Mivta. Because that's the spirit of the days. The Rebbe is going to speak about something important. What's he going to speak about, So we had no clue that this is coming. And then Yud B'S Tammuz, the Rebbe spoke. And then, Tzfas Tammuz was more of a less public Farbrengen. So still we heard the hookup, but, So I remember it. A lot of people were confused in Israel. People didn't really know exactly what's going on. The details were like, trickling in. This guy knew this guy knew that. But there was a general sense. I'm talking about the very beginning. After that, we all knew what's going on. But there was a general sense that this is something that is very, very upsetting the Rebbe. This is like really negia be'etzem mamish. And I'll say, as a young guy, I remember when the actual story and the details came out. I remember in my own mind a little bit of a kind of like a gap. I couldn't understand why this is so negia to the Rebbe. I'm not the only one, but I'm just saying, like, not that I was questioning it. I'm just saying, like, this was like the whole. I remember that we were still in Israel, and we heard. I think it was Shabbos Pinchas when the Rebbe like put his hand on the table, and it was like with Rashag. It was the Fabring that the Rebbe spoke with Rashag and knocked on the table, and those reports were coming in, and it was amazing. Like everybody knew. Then there was like, I think the Rebbe said then that it's hard for him to prepare a Rashi Sikh episode. There was an expression like this. So, things nobody ever heard the Rebbe. Ever heard the Rebbe affected ad kedei kach, or that he would say publicly that it's affected. So the sense that the Rebbe is in distress about it, to me at least, to where I was at in those years, was a lot stronger than the actual details of what's going on. It was just, we knew that some of the details. I'm just saying, today, when Bochrim or people read the whole story, you're going to the details, and this happened, that happened. For us, the details were secondary. The main thing was that the Rebbe was, so there was a lot of tension around this, a lot of stress. So that's just the Akdome. And then I went to New York, and I was there, like I said, I came middle of Memvov, so the summer of Memvov and the winter of Memzayin, and then I had a big schus to be Did Anotzach in New York and not in Morristown, and that is because on that Chanukah of Memzayin, like I said, I didn't spend so much time in Morristown. And so that Chanukah is, whoever remember those years, it's a famous Chanukah where basically almost the whole yeshiva was expelled back to New York as a punishment, which I knew I love those punishments. If they were upset at you, the punishment, you go to New York for a week. Okay, great, thank you. So I was one of those punished for not asking for shoes, whatever it was, and they sent me to New York. And there I am, and mitamol did anotzach, and I'm right there. So I remember 11 o'clock in the morning. I remember they started saying did anotzach. It was already talk before that it's coming. It wasn't a complete shock, but nobody really knew it's going to be when and what. And yeah, and that was an amazing time. The first few hours, everybody was dancing in front of 770, and everybody saying l'chaim, And then the Rebbe coming to Mincha, which I happen to remember it pretty well, because the contrast between where we were at, and the way the Rebbe came in, it was pretty obvious, and you could even see it in the video today, and imagine what it's like to feel it, It's like pretty much around 11, we got the news, if I remember correctly. So let's say 11:30 or so, you're already in front of 770, dancing, and then Mincha is 3:15, right? So it's like after 3 to 4 hours of the Chaim and dancing, and outside, inside, upstairs, downstairs, 770. Finally, the Rebbe comes in. Honestly, I was sure the Rebbe is going to come in. It's like that was the feeling. Everybody is dancing. I mean, we thought we are doing the right thing, and then the Rebbe walks in and, so serious. Also on his face, not only the movements of the hand, his face was so serious. And, they started singing I think it was Zev Katz, who was the Chazan, right, the Shliach Tzibur, and the Rebbe looked. It just didn't look like everybody is in the same on the same page here. However, and I remember that the Rebbe turned around to say Slicha. That moment that the Rebbe turned to say Slicha, I remember feeling like all the pressure going off, because if the Rebbe would say Slicha, I mean, this is Tovshin Mem Zayin. So this was not common to say Slicha, and there's nothing to say Slicha for unless, it's a Tevis. And also, I was, after some mashke, I remember also, by the way, this is the only time that I remember that the Rebbe is speaking and I'm not 100% sober, okay? To say it mildly, okay? Because at any other time, I speak to people about it on Purim, or any other time. Just imagine, like I said before, the Rebbe told me to say L'chaim, so I didn't have a L'chaim, but let's say I did have a L'chaim. Nobody really, I mean, you'd say L'chaim to the Rebbe, but nobody would really want to get too buzzed around the Rebbe. At least not me. I don't know about other people, but you want to, be in the moment and listen to what the Rebbe is saying. You want to hold cop. You don't want to lose your mind here. So, sometimes the Rebbe would say to people to say L'chaim again. Because if the Rebbe would really want somebody, the story with Eli Wiesel, that's a famous story. But it happened many times with people. The Rebbe said again, because the Rebbe knew that people, they don't want to say L'chaim, Not because they love to say L'chaim, but not when the Rebbe is there.
One of the integral components of being a chassid are the Chassidish Yom Tovim and Yom Pagra. Whether it's Hey Tevis, Yud Shvat, Yud Aleph Nisan, or Gimmel Tammuz. These days give us an opportunity to connect with our Rabbeim, to connect with each other, and be better Chassidim. What is the story behind each of these days? How did the Rebbe commemorate and celebrate these days? And most importantly, what are the lessons, the takeaways, and the action items Hamaisa Hua Ikr needed for each of these days? All of this and much, much more are answered in the new set recently published by Der Herr. Our Days is a journey through the Chabad calendar in story, meaning, and practice. With over 700 beautiful, glossy pages with elevated content, beautiful, beautiful photographs, you, your family, and friends will enjoy and live with each Chassidish Yom Tov. This book is a must for every Lubavitcher home, for every shul, for every school. It is a perfect gift item. This will not collect dust. It will be used day after day, month after month, year after year. You can have this set. Go to derher.org/our days. Order your set today and start living with Chassidish Yom Tov.
So I remember this feeling of ache, the simcha on one hand that the Rebbe is going to say sicha, so it is a big thing. We didn't just dance like for nothing, but also the fact that I'm not 100%. I was very distressed about it. And I remember when the Rebbe said right away, it's like within the first few seconds of the sicha, the Rebbe starts saying about how the Alter Rebbe said, as Medaf Rebbe mit der Zeit, and in Memane given the Mittler Rebbe, soll sein der Madrich von the junge Chassidim. Right? So it's a famous thing. The Rebbe said it many times, but here he said it in detail that the Alter Rebbe appointed the Mittler Rebbe to guide the young Chassidim. And I remember hearing it, and it was, for me, it was like, okay, the Rebbe is confirming the young Chassidim are standing over here half drunk. It's okay. The Rebbe, that's how I felt it, that there was some sort of And then the Rebbe said, "Utchi ruach yankev avim," it's like for sure the Rebbe was happy. It was all a matter of balance, So, and then the whole week, the Rebbe said sichas, and 770, there was nothing like it. I don't think there was ever that I remember. I mean, like Shiva Simei Mishte, it was mamish, like something from, and really all it was, it was love to the Rebbe. Really, that's what it was. Because, like I said before, in the details of the testimonies. I mean, there's some bochrim that were like learning all the details and what's going on. It's amazing. I mean, I knew what's going on. I wasn't as informed about everything, but it wasn't. I didn't feel then that this is where it was at. Well, I don't know the details. I know the Rebbe is happy. We're winning the court case. That's all I care. The Rebbe is happy. I'm happy. That was the sentiment around, and it was a pretty strong sentiment. It was amazing. It was yeah.
And all of them, when you're in New York, wherever, Morristown, during that period, that sentiment or that pressure was felt throughout all those months, until the Natzach.
Right. It was, and that's what I'm saying. It was like such a release, even though it was in the end, but we obviously didn't know that at that moment. So we just know the Rebbe was victorious, and it was just like the Rebbe would gemon simcha anyway in those years in a very very serious way. So it wasn't like simcha wasn't on the table, but this was even more because it was a personal thing. I didn't mention here another thing which happened where the Rebbe had pain in his leg, and because of that, he started davening upstairs. It was like a month that the Rebbe davened upstairs.
This is Menvav.
Right.
Other Menvav.
This isn't Menvav. Right. When I came, now I'm remembering as I was speaking to you, when I came, I told you I came after Purim in Menvov.
Just right then. That's when it happened.
Right, it's right then. And
the end of Adar.
Right, and the first time that the Rebbe went downstairs to daven, back downstairs to daven, was Yom Tov of Pesach. Leil Yom Tov of Pesach. And I remember this when they announced.
So those months, the Rebbe moved everything upstairs. Shabbos, right, everything was upstairs.
Right. I was, Shabbos morning, davening was up. Everything besides.
But the Rebbe came downstairs for Farbrengen.
Right. So besides Farbrengen, the Rebbe davened upstairs, right? So Shabbos, obviously, how much room is there upstairs for Shabbos? So you do have to come a lot earlier, right, to chop a place. But there you could hear Haftarah like you never hear downstairs. That's I remember that very, very strongly. I mean, besides davening upstairs was special, but the Haftarah was really. And then the first time the Rebbe came back down was Leil Yom Tov. It was a big simcha. I remember when the Rebbe came down. So I'm bringing this up to say that what I said before about like the Rebbe being besimcha, the Rebbe being victorious, it also has to do pashut with the Rebbe's health, begashmius, because the Rebbe was having a hard time walking, and the Rebbe stopped coming out of the main door of 770. And since then, I mean, it didn't. Usually, I mean, depending where he went, went to the sukkah or went to the library, so he did come out from the front. But I'm saying in general, with the car and everything, the Rebbe from that time didn't really go from front of 770. It's a big detail to have in mind over here. I'm saying the symbolism of it.
So what you're saying is basically that besides the Rebbe's the Agavas Nefesh and the anguish that it caused the Rebbe, and everyone felt that was like probably the first time the Chassidim were privy to such, emotion to the Rebbe. Also, at that time, there was also all of a sudden a physical, health-related thing with the Rebbe that also pained Chassidim. So it was like it was a whole tkufa basically of that feeling for the Rebbe, and then I guess Heitevis kind of lifted that. That's what you're saying.
Right.
I'm summarizing and asking, confirming, making sure I'm
getting
it right.
You said it right. I mean, before that, we did hear the Rebbe speaking very emotionally about, the Eretz Yisroel and Mi Yehudi and different things. I mean, the passion when the Rebbe would speak about, or even, Ad Mosai, for example, but still, all those issues is one thing, but something so personal, the Sforim and the Nesias of the Rebbe, and is affecting the Rebbe Begashmias, that was a whole other level. And therefore the simcha of it, when it was Dida Notzach, the simcha was, I'll tell you a side comment, but I heard recently, I listened again to the Farbringen of Yudalat Kislev Tovshin Lametes, which is 50 years, the anniversary. So the Rebbe says with an expression that is asking why is there a Farbringen? We didn't see by Rabbi Sein and Sienu that, well, first of all, not all of them came to 50 years of anniversary, but those who did, we didn't see that they did anything publicly with Chassidim. So then the Rebbe said, whatever he explained over there, but he said that it's Minhag Medina, that in a day like this, there come the Bnei Mishpocha and Oyavim, Epis expression, I heard it. So basically the Rebbe is saying, so that Farbringen, this is not just Shabbos Farbringen, Yom Tov Farbringen, this is a Farbringen to the Mishpocha, the Mishpocha, the loved ones. So if you listen carefully, the Rebbe is basically telling you, if you're there, or if you're listening to it, you're a Mishpocha, So it's a similar thing, it was something. Dida Notzach was like an inside situation, the Rebbe with the Nesias, the Mishpocha, the Sforim. It was a different category of connection, and therefore, I think the Chassidim also felt more Hamish kind of a situation,
Right. I mean, today there's a whole other appreciation and understanding of Heitevis when you, first of all, knowing more details of the story and also all of the sichas about Hu B'Chaim, which we appreciate, after Gimmel Tammuz, I guess, in hindsight, much more. But you're saying at that time, it was a whole different component. That was the main thing about the,
right.
the relationship with the Chassidim and the Rebbe.
Right. I agree with you that in perspective from today, this was all basically, preparation for our situation today, because those sichas that the Rebbe says in those years regarding the Sforim and Dida Notzach, that every year the Rebbe gets Mer Aktiv and Hu B'Chaim and all those issues. Yeah, those sichas are giving us a lot of koach today, and it even seems as if this was some sort of a chone for us, or something. I don't know exactly what to call it, but that's how we look at it today. Yeah, absolutely.
Right. Okay, so what are some of the, so Mem Vav, Mem Zayin, you're there, and I asked in the beginning about understanding the sichas, and you said that as the years went on, there was more of that. So are there any highlights from those early years that you remember, that something that you want to share, particularly? I mean, there's like a moment that kind of cemented you being plugged into the Rebbe's mission, or something like that, that type of thing. There's like there's some famous sichos at Yachal Atzilei. There's different things like that. So maybe you want to share.
Right. So I'll tell you something in general, and then I'll zero in on a couple of moments. But in general, I want to say that in those years there was Farbringen almost every Shabbos. I mean, after the Rebbetzin, for sure there was a Farbringen every Shabbos, but even before that, it was almost every Shabbos. The amount of Torah that the Rebbe poured on us in real time. I mean, obviously today we have in the bookshelf, we could see. I mean, it takes exactly 3 seconds to show somebody what is the fruits of the Rebbe's Torah. I mean, we see the volume of it, even. So that's obvious today. When you look at the library, you could show it, Poshet Begashmis, right? But I'm speaking about in real life, in real happening, right? So you're there, you're Bochum 770, okay? So the amount of sichas, let's say you have a likut every Shabbos, okay? And you have the sicha of last week, which the anocha is 30 to 40 pages, And then there's all kinds of things in the middle of the week, right? I'm just saying, Stam, to catch, to be, what's the word? To be like updated with the Rebbe and the recent publication.
Up to date.
Up to date, yeah, thank you. To be up to date with the Rebbe, yeah, let's say I arrive here, Oder Menvov, to be up to date, that itself took a lot of work just to catch up to where the Rebbe is holding, And, let's say there's a Farbrengen on Shabbos. So Farbrengen is, let's say, 4 hours, 5 hours, depending which year. But let me zogen, this is about what it is. And you feel, and by Monday, Tuesday, depends which week, Anocha comes out, the whole Farbrengen is written. Okay, so no matter what I got on Shabbos, now I have the Anocha, and I have to learn it, right? So I'm saying this to say that for somebody like me, somebody came for a week or two or a month, but somebody was there for like straight, 5 years, and then like another 2-3 years in and out, something like that, which is basically my matziv. I'm just saying there's no way for me to hold it all in my mind. So, but I do know where, when I was there. So for me, let's say this year particularly is Arboim Shana from Memvov. So I'm looking, doing Tishrei more now, also a little bit, but doing Tishrei, Chaptit, Arboim Shana. A lot of times I look in Farbrengens and I'm like, wow, I was there. That's amazing. I feel more connected to it because I was there, and yet I don't remember it at all. Certain sichos, I'm like, really? How can I don't remember it, Because we're talking about some seriously high volume of sichos that you have to remember. I wish I remember more than I do, But then I'm saying this as a setting to, on the other side of it, there are some moments that were so strong that would never forget, that they're there, they're chokuk in my mind. You wake me up in the middle of the night, I'm there, Baruch Hashem, those moments are obviously the more emotionally charged moments, because usually that's how we remember things. There's like something going on, So for example, yes, you mentioned Ato Yochel Atziloi. That's a sicha that I remember where I was standing. I remember first of all that sicha, which is also a likut. It's a likut sichas. It's muge. I'm pretty sure it's muge twice. One version in likut sichas. There's another version that the Rebbe was magia right after. It's almost the same, but not exactly. But there's also another interesting detail to that sicha, which is very unusual. Not completely unusual, but highly unusual. And that is that the Rebbe actually said the questions of the Rashi a few days before, because there was a yechidus for the Orchim who came for Pesach. This is right after Pesach, this Farbrengen, like a week or two. And there was a yechidus, and in the yechidus, which we all heard, we would be standing outside and listening to the yechidus, or maybe it's, I think it's a yechidus. I'm pretty sure it's a yechidus, or maybe it's a sicha to women. No, I think it's a yechidus, and the Rebbe there, he says that he's going to speak about it on Shabbos. It's the chitas of the day, I think. So the Rebbe starts with the sicha and the chumash, and then it starts asking questions about Rashi. What is Rashi talking about? And he's presenting all the questions. And by Shabbos, this already I'm not sure, but it might have been even muge. Could be that the Rebbe was magia the questions, or they were printed. Like everybody knew the Rebbe is going to talk about it. I'm just saying, this did happen many times that we knew the Rashi, that or even sometimes the question, but to have a mamish sicha, it's like a 15-minute sicha. I think it's not short, So we knew the questions, but there, what I remember particularly is not dafka the biur itself, which I did hear. That's talking before about sichas that I understood or not. By the way,
You have to give a background of what the Rashi is.
What the Rashi is, right? So the Rashi is basically lo samod al dam recho. Lo samod al dam recho. don't stand by when your friend is blood is being spilled. Okay, that's basically the pasuk, and Rashi gives an example that kegoin, somebody is drowning in the river, and a chayoro, a wild animal, or robbers come to him. Okay, and you could save him. In this particular, it's a very particular scenario. Somebody is drowning in the river, and a wild animal or robbers are at the edge of the river. So it's not only he's drowning, but if he's trying to save himself, he has nowhere to go. And the Rebbe was analyzing this, comparing it to the midrash, to the source of where Rashi takes it from, and analyzing the differences in the in the wording there, and also just the idea, why is Rashi getting into such a particular situation? And the answer, of course, I'm just saying the point of it. The answer that the Rebbe gave was that Rashi is presenting us with a situation where there's a suffix, what is, whether you're going to save the person or you may get hurt yourself because it's a wild animal or robbers, and nonetheless you do have to risk your own safety, which is a suffix. You're not sure if you're going to get hurt or not, and to save another person. Okay, so that's the general topic and the general idea. But there, when the Rebbe discussed this idea that you could actually save this person, the Rebbe, when he said it, those words, "Ve'ato yochel atziloi," and if a Kodesh Baruch Hu is showing you a situation like this, why is he showing it to you? "Ve'ato yochel atziloi," and I remember the Rebbe shouting it, so to say. So in 7 days quiet. When the Rebbe is speaking, anyway, it's quiet. Nobody is speaking. For bringing everybody's, as they say, you could hear the flies. It's not an exaggeration. It was really very, very quiet. When the Rebbe was speaking, nobody dared to not to speak, but to even make any sounds. So it was very quiet, and you hear the Rebbe, and his tone, is going up, and he's basically. But the idea is that he's saying to us that we could save another yid, So for bringings like that, when the Rebbe basically, put it in our mind, not just the idea as an intellectual idea that we could help another yid, but it's our responsibility that we must do it. So it's like we have in the parsha where Yosef, he sees Yaakov Avinu. There it's in a situation of where he's about to do something not right, and he sees Yaakov Avinu. But I think about us, those who heard the Rebbe, or today learning the Sichos, but of course, if you heard it from the Rebbe, it's like sometimes there are situations, when I don't feel like doing miftzoim. I'm like, whatever it is, I'm at some airport, and it's not like, you ask me, I'm okay, just keep doing my thing, But you hear the Rebbe's voice, like, hello, you could do something, those things have a huge impression, and also that thought that you could affect. A lot of times it's not just that I don't feel like it, but even deeper is that I don't think it's going to work. Like I was on shlichus, whatever it is, we have to go speak to the mayor, tell him I don't know, to give permission for a Hanukkah menorah, whatever it might be, and you feel like, nah, why would he care about it? And all of a sudden the Rebbe's voice, you hear it in your head, and it's like, what are you talking about? Of course you can do it. Well, I give you the koiches to do it. Those are very powerful moments where the Rebbe instilled those ideas. I always tell people, by the way, that the Rebbe, there's two tools that the Rebbe used. I mean, there's more than two, but two general tools the Rebbe used to affect the world. One was Yechidus, personal encounters with people, which obviously change people's lives completely. And the other one is Farbrengen. Now, Farbrengen was a bigger keli for the Rebbe. First of all, Yechidus also stopped at some point, but even in general, Yechidus, Farbrengen, this is really the way the Rebbe did it. And I think Yechidus, I'm not here to rate it. I'm just saying, like, Farbrengen was the main kli, right? And that's what made people go to shlichus and follow the Rebbe and be Chassidim. It was farbrengen, basically, right? So yeah, those sichas, it's not just the intellectual ideas, which are amazing, obviously, but it's the way the Rebbe gave it to us. Mesoro, Moshe Kibbel Torah Misino, Mesoro. He Pashat gave us the ideas. Those moments of passionate farbrengens is what went into our hearts.
Yeah, and it's interesting that you're saying that the Rebbe gave this, and this is the with that power, to go on shlichus. I think I heard from others that this farbrengen that you're describing, Ba'at Yochel Atzilei, was a big wake-up call. There's a few sichas during those years, strong words that the Rebbe used about shlichus. I believe I heard that there are people that that was when it hit them, when you become shluchim, that's the the bachrim at the time. That was when it hit them that their tafkid is to go on shluchus.
Oh, absolutely. In those years, Botei Chabad in winter Memzayin, and also Arum did a notzach also when the Rebbe said Tkufa Chadosha, So definitely. Somebody once told me, somebody in Crown Heights, that have a lot of kids. So he told me, and he's I guess maybe 5 to 8 years older than me, something like that, So he said once jokingly, but it's not really jokingly. He said, listen, when I was in 770, the Rebbe talked very strongly against family planning. When you were in 770, the Rebbe talked very strongly about Botei Chabad, so that's the difference. I live here and I have a lot of kids, and you guys went on shlichus, But it's a joke, but it's true. It's definitely true, and you're right that in Memvov, Memzayin, even though the Rebbe spoke about shlichus, before very, very strongly, but I think in those years, the Rebbe emphasized more and more that he's speaking to everybody. That this is you don't have to wait to be called. Before there was shlichus, so if Maskiris called you, then it meant that you're getting the job, something like that. But in our years, in Memvov, Memzayin, Memches, in those years, it just became not that you don't have to be official, but I'm saying the Rebbe pushed this idea that everybody could. Excuse me. Excuse me. That the Rebbe pushed the idea that it's for everybody. Chazak. So it's true. It's true.
Right. And someone else that I spoke to in one of the previous podcasts was talking about that in his years, he has his years, but now you guys, after Gimmel Tammuz, have everything. I think the lashon he used was miksha achas. So I guess now we have to have large families and go in shlichus, if they're both. Okay,
That's right.
so... Okay, I'm thinking about those years in that tkufa.
Okay.
So talking about Mevav, Mem Zayin. So then we get to Memches. So first of all, something that everybody, first of all, was Hakel, Memches, the big kach that the Rebbe had in Hakel, and then also everybody that I talked to describes Simchas Torah, Memches, as out of this world.
Right.
Maybe you want to talk about that.
Okay, so first of all, yeah, of course, I also talk about it. In fact, when I talk about it with people, I always tell them, don't believe me. Ask other people about Memches. So get it from other people as well. So I'd say like this. Listen, by Memches, I was really only before that at 3 Simchas Torahs, right? Memhei, Memvov, Memzayin. So I'm not the expert on Simchas Torahs, but I was there for 3 years prior, and it was very different. Well, first of all, Tismach in general, when Tismach came, and the Rebbe talked about Simcha because of the letters of the year, Tismach or Tesamach. So the Rebbe already pushed Simcha very, very strongly, and then it was the moment when Rashag left. Okay, so there was a combination of a couple of things that happened together.
He left our office.
Yeah, he left. Now, that moment, he basically came into, well, first there was Ma'ariv, and then there was a coffee. So he did come into a coffee. And he's a big player in the in the scene of a kofis, because he goes to a kofis with the Rebbe, the first one and the
Dances with
last
the
one,
Rebbe.
obviously, and dances with the Rebbe. And the years that I was there before, he was already quite a senior gentleman, and the Rebbe would put a hand on him, and the dance would be extremely slow due to his condition, and this is just how it was, So the Rebbe, Pashut, physically couldn't really do much when he's with him, So then he comes in for a kafis, and really just like in the very beginning, or maybe it was already after Ma'ariv. No, Ma'ariv was separate. No, you came in. It was very close to the beginning. This is like the first 10 minutes. I don't know. It didn't feel well after he came in or whatever it was. The Rebbe looked, ayin aher, a few minutes go by, and everybody gets it that he's leaving. Now, let me tell you something. The simcha that everybody felt, with all due respect to Ashag, yeah, but because everybody got it, that the Rebbe is going to be by himself, you know that it's going to be a whole different akofis you ever seen. I mean, this
And
is
it
going to be
happened once before, by the way. I think in Mamalef, I think Rashag had a
right.
stroke, and that year he wasn't there, and the Rebbe danced by himself. So there was precedent for it.
Okay, so
Yeah.
that I didn't know at the moment, and even if people did, still, it was like so the simcha. Remember, this like everybody was like, and also the Rebbe himself. I remember the nigun after, or the first thing that happened after. Everything was different. It was pretty. At least this is how I remember it. That it was pretty felt. That it wasn't just us. Like there was simcha. There was not. I mean, let him be healthy and everything, but there's going to be something else going on here. Okay, so that's first of all. Then the Maisa. That's actually what happened when the Rebbe was holding the Sefer Torah by himself, and looking at certain sides of 770 in a more particular way, and and pointing the Sefer Torah towards them, and it was just incredible. Because let's say if I saw the Rebbe's back for a moment, right, when he's like looking at the other side, and you look in front of you and you see the whole side that the Rebbe looks at, basically going to the ceiling and down, and you know that in a few seconds or whatever it's going to be our turn. It was just really unbelievable. Okay, so the akofis of the Rebbe by himself were a major thing, but besides that, add to that also the regular akofis, the movements that the Rebbe did with his body, and just the level of intensity. I remember in general a couple times, but in more particular, I remember it in akofis mches. I remember telling myself, work harder to remember what you sing. Seriously, I'm not making it up. I remember it, mamish, b'shas ma'aseh, that I'm telling myself, you have to remember this. You have to remember, because I remember feeling that this is not, I couldn't even believe that I actually see that the Rebbe is physically doing, with his hands, clapping, and the speed of it. And it was just like you were looking and it was like, this can't be. I can't be. This is not, what I'm seeing here is not begashmius going on. It's impossible. It's something else. Like, there's no words to describe it. But I do remember feeling it b'shas ma'aseh. And then when the Rebbe came back to his place, um, I think this must have been the second night. I think the Rebbe, there was like a few other songs that the Rebbe did from his place. In other words, he went on the stairs. Akofis pretty much ended, and instead of the Rebbe going to the stender, he's there and he's singing a few more songs, singing "Niet Niet." I remember even that the Rebbe that everybody's singing a song, and the Rebbe wants to start another song, but the 770, everybody's still singing, and label from the back is behind the Rebbe, and he's going with the hands, everybody to be quiet, because he chapped that the Rebbe wants to sing another song. The Rebbe sang Uforatzto and Niet Niet, and another song that I don't remember right now, but that extra akofis, akofis, when it came to the end, there was always Ashreinu. Everybody sing Ashreinu, Ashreinu, Ma Tov Chelken. When the Rebbe would come back to his place and the Sefer Torah would be back, and that song, I don't know when it started that everybody was singing it, but that Ashreinu at the end of a Kofes that was sang every year was pashut a love song to the Rebbe. Just imagine it after the whole Tishrei and after the whole thing, and this is a Kofes, and everybody feels so grateful to Hashem that we are actually seeing this, that we are part of this, so that Ashreinu was just like, everybody was really there 100%. And so in that year, when the Rebbe, it felt like the Rebbe himself, like we felt, Ashreinu was like, we don't want this ever to end, right? In Tismach, it felt like the Rebbe was feeling it, like almost. It was like the Rebbe also didn't want it to end. He added more nigunim and more nigunim. And in fact, I remember also that some people, I was then, 20 years old, whatever, and I heard like a day or two later, people told me, that some elder Chassidim are saying that maybe it's not such a good sign, that the Rebbe is so besimcha. Because, in the Rebbe to besimcha betishrei, maybe he's trying to mamtik some gzeira. And as a bocher, I remember dismissing it, thinking, who is the Meshuggah who came up with this? Like, it didn't sound to me at all like a legit way of thinking. But I do remember that people mentioned it. I definitely do remember it, and I'm remembering not accepting it at all. But obviously, we all know, what happened in Chav Bei Shvat. So there was that sense in Tismach. Tismach was a very emotionally charged year because it started with this crazy bang of simcha that we've never seen. And then, it took a few months, but still, it did happen in the winter. The Rebbe sitting Shiva and walking by the Rebbe sitting Shiva. This was like not something anybody thought about or wanted to be a part of. And yet, at the end of the year, the Rebbe says, it's actually in a Mugedik Sicha, in Kiseitz Tismach, where the Rebbe speak about the Simcha B'Taharoso, and the Rebbe also got up to dance over there. This was also one of the unforgettable Farbringans of all times, both in terms of content of what the Rebbe is saying over there, that we need to be more b'simcha to bring Mashiach. It's a pretty radical sicha there, but also the dance that the Rebbe danced. And also, the Rebbe said over there that it was a tzloche dikeyo, I think, mutzlach dike, tzloche dike, the shnas tzloche, because of buildings, because Tismach is also shnas binyan. But, it's an amazing thing that in that year, the Rebbe actually writes in a Mugedik Sicha that it was a tzloche dikeyo, so it was a mix, but definitely Tismach was, and also the demand, the drisha from Rebbe that we should be besimcha. It's like all over that year, and that definitely. I as somebody who basically kind of grew up in 770, I'll tell you something. I'm always ready for a dance. Seriously, it's even today. I live in Tzfas. I daven in a Polish shul. They don't dance so much in the shul that I daven in. But today, punkt, somebody started dancing after davening. Some of the people in the shul, they look at him, whatever, maybe he's having a hard time, I don't know. But for me, I see a Yid dancer, I immediately, Kadima, I'm like, why don't we do it every day? Because, growing up in 770, this is like the most natural, normal thing to do, is to be besimcha, even if you're not besimcha. It doesn't matter if I'm there or not. It's the Rebbe mont, mezuzah besimcha,
Yeah.
So that's definitely a result of education in 770 in those years, no question about it.
Definitely is a common scene in 770, especially in the later years when the Rebbe starts saying a sikh in the weekday very often. And the Rebbe, when there's a shturm dik sikh, whether about simcha or about anything else, from Mashiach, the natural reaction when the Rebbe leaves it, there's the whole rikud, the whole dance in 770, every other day.
Yeah,
in the middle of the riots, there was a sikh about the Gili from Mashiach. Everyone's dancing at 770.
Right. Exactly. So
so maybe Yeah. You go back to Memches. It's actually, when you learn the sichos, which I happen to learn a lot of the sichos Memches, recently. So it's like you read them, especially Tishrei, and I was saying about Tismach and Tisamach, and then you know what's happening Chav B'Shvat. It's like hard to compute exactly how that happened. But maybe you could talk a little bit about Chav B'Shvat Memches, the stalkers of the Rebbetzin.
Right. So let me just say this in general comments before we get into the details. I think that maybe for people who weren't there, I don't know if everybody knows the feeling of, what we felt back then. It was a big disaster, basically. It's like in my book, and I don't feel so comfortable to say it, but I do feel it. That Gimmel Tammuz basically started in Chof Beit Shvat. In other words, the fact that the Rebbetzin passed away, that was not. The vision was the Rebbe, is taking us to Geula with the Rebbetzin. It doesn't matter that we never saw her and we didn't know anything about her. That's she's the Rebbe's Rebbetzin. She's our Rebbetzin, but whether I know her or I see her, okay, so she's not. She's very extremely tsanua, and she's not. By the way, I did look at the Rebbetzin once, and it was quite obvious that she was not so happy about it. So I experienced personally this thing about the Rebbetzin not wanting to be seen in public.
What was that?
That was the Rebbetzin in those years in the later mems. They built this apartment for the Rebbe in the back of the library, and the Rebbe would go there for Shabbos, right, instead of walking home. I don't remember which year it started, but when I came, which is mid Memvov, this was already how it was.
The Rebbe and the Rebbetzin were there for Shabbos.
The Rebbetzin was there for Shabbos, and the Rebbe went to the library, and in the morning he would walk back to 770. So the Rebbetzin would be driven to 770 a while before Shabbos by Gansburg. He was the shamish and he was the driver, and usually there was an awning covering the door. The driveway of the library, which I guess it's not there anymore since they built. Right? I'm trying
to. It's still there. The driveway.
Still there? It is still there. Okay, so that driveway.
I don't think you could. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, probably still there. I'm not picturing it how it is right now. I'm remembering it how it was. So anyway, there was a awning. Before he would go pick her up, he would lower this awning, then he would go get her. So with this awning down, when he would drive the car, you wouldn't see anything, which was the reason why this awning was there. So you can't see anything. But this one Friday, and I was there with a friend or two, sitting on the bench in the Chotzer Dorten, and it was just before Shabbos. We were already ready for Shabbos. I don't know why we were there, but we were there, and we noticed that somebody forgot to lower this awning. So we figured, the Rebbetzin is probably going to be driven in any moment. She's coming for Shabbos, so this is our opportunity to look, So that's what we did. Nobody was there, just the three of us or two of us. And he opened the door, and she came. I bought her the walker. She had a walker then, and so she gave us a look. She just turned with her head to look at us, looking at her, and just the way it felt to me. It it wasn't like a upset look, but it wasn't. It was like, guys, what are you doing here? Kind of that kind of a look. Yeah. It's like I'm not here to be seen. So why are you here to look? Something like that. At least that's how we felt. So we did see her, but I'm saying the general vision was that the Rebbe and the Rebbetzin will lead us to Mashiach Tzidkenu. That was just like a given. So once that happened, and all of a sudden you have, the Rebbetzin passing. Not only that, the Rebbe, we saw the Rebbe. I mean, could just try to imagine this feeling. Motzei Shabbos, the Rebbe came for Shabbos. Look, it was obvious that the Rebbe, even though he was in pain, obviously, but it was also obvious that he's not going in the regular route of, just sitting Shiva and all that. I mean, he's doing everything that Shulchan Aruch says. But I remember when the Rebbe, after the funeral, the Rebbe said a very short tzikha in the house. That was a big sign of, we're going to go forward anyway. Then the Rebbe came for Shabbos. I mean, it was Shabbos Mevorchim. So the Rebbe came for Shabbos. I mean, obviously, what in 770? Yeah, it was. So it was a mix between, the Rebbe is sitting Shiva, but the Rebbe is keep going, and the things the Rebbe said, V'chayit and the Liboy. You see, I actually think that the Rebbe Mamshich given a new way in the world of how to look at mourning. I think people before, sometimes I think about things that sound maybe extreme Chabad, like as if all I'm thinking about is the slichas and I don't see the world. But really, I'm saying this from the other perspective. I see it not from the slichas. I see it from the reality. I see in reality, especially in Israel, but it's also in America, that a lot of times when people go through, go through a passing or even a tragedy, people try to navigate the energy right away into mitzvahs, writing Sifrei Torahs, buildings, making buildings in names of people who passed away. I really believe that way of thinking in the world, the Rebbe brought it down in Chof Bei Shvat. The way the Rebbe himself spoke right away, and bifrat that their name was Chayo. This is how the Rebbe ended the first time he spoke, the day of the funeral, and he came home. This is how he ended the Sichur. Bifrat that their name was Chayo. So the whole thing of Chaim and Mamshich Zayin, the life, that was what the Rebbe brought down. But meanwhile, while it was happening, Motzei Shabbos, the Rebbe was sitting and in his place in a small shiva chair, and everybody, Bochrim and everybody. I mean, we didn't go to the house to Menachem Ovel, the Rebbe in the house, but went in 770, But just the feeling of it that I'm going Menachem Ovel the Rebbe. I mean, what is going on in the world? If we got to that moment, it felt so strange, especially also in light of Tismach and all that. I mean, the whole thing was kind of surreal, but that's what it was,
Mm-hmm. And then started a whole new tkufa with the Rebbe being in the house, and in 770, besides for Shabbos, basically moving to the Rebbe's house. Like, what was that like?
Right. So, the davening with the Rebbe is something very special that we had. In those days, once in a while you would get the daven mamish in the Rebbe's house, but the rest of the time, most bochrim weren't able to be there every day. But in 770, you heard the Rebbe, during time of davening, you heard the Rebbe in the speakers in 770. So basically, it would be there 9:30, put on tefillin and daven with the Rebbe. It was actually pretty amazing situation, and because of that also, I mean, the nusach of the Rebbe's davening, I pretty much know it from that year. Otherwise I wouldn't know it so well. But Shmona Esrei, hear the Rebbe 3 times a day, daven Shmona Esrei, Semach David Avdecha Mehir, Osat Mir Vekarnei Torah. You hear it a whole year. So, and I also recommend to people who weren't there. I mean, the recordings are there. How many Chassidim, daven with the Rebbe once in a while. Just put it on and daven with the Rebbe. It's a pretty amazing thing that it's even available. So that was like a highlight of Tismach. Davening with the Rebbe a whole year was that, and yeah. But in general, I'll be honest and say I don't want to get too depressed over here, but I will say that what I said before, that it was a choneh for Gimmel Tammuz. I'll tell you something. I don't come from a Lubavitch background. Okay, the letoivu lemutav. Really, I'm being very honest. I didn't go up in a Chassidish home, and that you know results in just you don't get the same education. There's certain things you get. It's like somebody who didn't go up from. You either hear it when you're 3 years old about Moshe Rabbeinu and Yaakov Avinu, and if you do hear it at 3 years old, you're a certain kind of a yid, and if not, listen. Some people. I mean, I'm married to a Baal Tshuva. My wife didn't go up like this. I know this from a very close relationship. Baruch Hashem, a Chassidish woman, everything, but there's something you didn't go up with. So the same thing, somebody go up with the Rebbe. Baruch Hashem, like my kids, like kids who grew up from zero, from the birth, from the moment of birth, they see a picture of the Rebbe. Obviously, okay. So that's the good side of it. The other side of it, I would say, if it's okay for me to say, that sometimes you also have there's certain things you don't think about. So I think that in the years I was in 770, and especially since Tismach, I'm embarrassed to admit that I was thinking about worldly, things probably more than my friends who were, Chabad from birth, and definitely Tismach was definitely a big shakeup because the Rebbetzin passes away. What's going on? I mean, this is it's just brought a lot of bilbul. And also seeing the Rebbe sitting shiva. The Rebbe didn't take a haircut. A lot of things were different, so I'm not saying that this was occupying my mind too much. I was there, I was in 770, I was hoping and davening with everybody, and Mashiach any moment, this was the headspace, but still, I mean, Chobei Shvat was definitely a big bug in the plan, it was not something you can totally avoid. I mean, what is this? So it was not easy.
Right. Were there other Chavedim that shared the sentiment, or this was your? I've heard this from others, but I don't know if it was
Right,
common or if this was.
right. So not most people wouldn't speak about it. There was one friend of mine did speak to me about it, and he was actually in worse shape than I was, I guess. So he was telling me, what do you think? I mean, it happened to the Rebbetzin. I mean, what do you think? So there were people, mostly no. It reminds me, if we're already there, the sikh of Cheshboino Shelo, Bo Nachshav Cheshboino Shelo Elam, that's Motzei Shabbos. I remember that sikha.
Right, the Rebbe addressed
Yeah, the
a
Rebbe
reality of after Gimmel
basically,
Tammuz, and it was that, and it was then. It was then. I mean, the
right,
Rebbe
that's what
also
I'm saying. That's what I'm
after
saying.
during the shiva, the Rebbe wrote. During the shiva, the Rebbe called in Rabbi Krinsky to organize the tzava. I mean,
Right. So for example, that sikha, that nobody wanted to accept that the Rebbe actually said these words. So the sikha wasn't, the Rebbe asked the Magia, and they didn't give the whole thing, right? So it was that gives us the kind of the feeling of where people were holding, which was we would rather not go there. That was the thinking, and which is okay. It's not that I wanted to go there. I'm just saying maybe I thought about it more than others. For example, I'll give you an example. The Rebbe, Nun Aleph, Nun Beis. I don't remember to tell you when it started. I'm sure those who are experts in the Yomanim, they probably could pull off this information. But at some point, the Rebbe started coming late into Shabbos Farbrengens. It used to be that 1:30 was 1:30. A minute, 2 minutes, but 1:30 is 1:30. And then there was years, I remember this, it's like 1:45, 1:50. And just the fact that the Rebbe wasn't keeping the times the way he did before, it was unsettling. I think that's a good word to choose. Really, I'm serious. Unsettling. It wasn't like that I was over worried about what's happening right this minute, but it was just And since Chof Shvat, that unsettling feeling kicked in. I mean, obviously, Memtes was very strong. Tafshin Nun, it was amazing years. So the Rebbe was very, very strong, and the Fabrengens and everything. It wasn't. I'm just saying it was lurking somewhere there where before Chof Shvat, it wasn't even on the table. It wasn't. Nobody was like basically going there.
Right. I mean, the
So
Rebbe himself said in Chof Shvat Nun Beis that it was a different tkufa from Chof Shvat. Was a new tkufa. The Rebbe said it
right,
himself. So
right. That's right.
yeah. Among Chassidim is brought to you by Chassidische Der Herr. We live in a chaotic world, a world where for us Chassidim is a seinu, lei ra'inu, we do not have the ability to hear and see the Rebbe on a daily basis. Yet we know that the Rebbe is very much with us, and the Chassidus Chabad is alive and thriving more than ever before. One needs to only tap into it. Chassidische Der Herr provides you and your family with the tools necessary to tap into all of this. Whether it's the monthly magazine, the way it all began, whether it's Der Herr books, Der Herr online content, and so much more. Men, women, and children throughout the world benefit and use these tools on a daily basis. Whether it's children enjoying the children's magazine that comes along with the regular Der Herr, or enjoying the children's podcast, whether it's Bachrim in yeshivas receiving the Der Herr, whether it's girls in high schools enjoying Der Herr club in their local high school. People all over the world and from all walks of life enjoy and utilize these tools and take advantage of it. If you're not already subscribed to the Her Monthly Magazine, do so today at derher.org. That's derher.org. Der Herr is a dynamic organization which is committed to continue providing these tools, grow on a constant basis, and do all that we can to help this effort. Baruch Hashem, it takes a lot of resources and finances to make this all happen. You can be part of Der Herr through your financial support as well, through visiting our website derher.org, or through contacting us to setting up a meeting. Thank you very much. Enjoy the rest of the podcast. Okay, so there's Tafshin Mem Tes. So I want to ask you about Tafshin Nun for those who have been reading the Der Herr magazine for the last year and a half, and Kanamakam La'ira. If you're not, make sure to be subscribed at derher.org. Even if you don't, I'm doing a little plug over. Even if you don't read every issue, that this is the magazine that's Drengzach in your shtub is important for the household. Anyhow, but I can't resist. But in the Her, we have a section where we write various articles featuring different things. But we have one section that's been there from the beginning. It's called Leben mit den Leben, where we just go through a Yuman. So the last few years, it's not a translation of Yuman. We've been reconstructing it from various Yuman, but we've been doing Ala Seder, Tafshin Nun, and now we're doing Nun Aleph. And one thing that this theme that I've been seeing throughout all the months, and it's going into Nun Aleph, is the whole idea of the Gulf War. Right. And the foundational sichos that the Rebbe spoke then, because about it was in reaction to a certain Rosh Hashiva in Eretz Yisroel that was speaking negatively about Yidden, and very, very strong sichos. And then obviously the whole story of the Gulf War, but and then the Rebbe said that nothing's going to happen. But it starts with Tafshin Nun. I mean, there was a famous speech given by the Rosh Hashiva talking very negatively about Yidden, and the Rebbe reacted to that very, very strongly. So is that something that you remember well, that event?
Yes, absolutely. I'll just tell you plug in the hair, and I could also say, and saying it honestly, since I'm bilingual with Hebrew and English, I really think the hair is like the best Iskashrus publication. I love it because we have great stuff in Hebrew, but just the way it's organized and written, it's really very helpful in giving the sense of what's going on in 770. So I'm all in for the plug.
Okay.
Yes, so I'll tell you, the Tov Shinun, excuse me, so Tov Shinun, obviously Tiesh Nas Nisim, and like you said, also the in the winter there, they will start speaking about when the Berlin Wall fell, which is pretty much the end of 89 in the Goyish calendar, and I think November 89. So there the Rebbe spoke about in the Fabringen that, that Europe is basically B'darkei Noam, B'darkei Sholem, instead of it being in a war, in bloodshed, it's falling apart peacefully.
Communism.
And about that famous Rosh Yeshiva, you're right. There was a speech. Actually, that speech is in Hebrew. His speech as a Wikipedia entry, because he was speaking totally negatively about the kibbutznikim and all that. And the Rebbe responded, and in Tov
Second,
Shinun,
just I have a question. This was in a buildup of the conflict in Kuwait. It was part of the Gulf War. That speech, or it wasn't connected.
I don't know that this was in my memory relating to the war, but it happened at the same time, or before,
So he
But
said
I don't,
that he said that whatever he said that that the kibbutznikim are
yeah, they're eating trays, and like basically,
Chassidim and
yeah,
etc.
yeah, and we all know how it is in Eretz Yisroel. Actually, that sicha that I'm going to talk about, it's the Vayikro Tov Shinun. That sicha, the Rebbe lays a certain yesoid in how we relate to other Yidden. But I'll tell a little bit of a personal background for that sicha and why Vayikro Tov Shinun is a sicha that I'm feeling very connected to. And that is because in Tov Shinun, I went to Shlichus to Nepal for Pesach with two of my friends, David Bisk and Chaim Bochalevsky. We were all Bochrim then, obviously. And we went to do the Pesach in Nepal. There was a lot of times people introduce me as the guy who went for the first time to Nepal, but it's not true. There was a Seder in 1989. Bochrim came from Australia. Mandy Castell, who is in Australia now also, and Mandy Lipsker from New York, and they were Bochrim in Australia, and they went on Shlichus to Kathmandu. The next year, Tov Shinun, we went from New York, from Merkos, with Rabbi Kotlarski, all of a sudden he arranged it. So that Shlichus that
I once spoke to Rabbi Kotlarski Barichas about this whole story. It was connected to something you were writing in the hair, so he gave me a little bit of a rundown of the background to those shlichus. And I believe he mentioned your name also.
Right, yeah. What happened is, and that we discovered years later. We didn't know that back then, but there were there were Israeli travelers in Nepal in 88, in Tismach, in Pesach of Tafshin Ches. There were already Israelis there, and they went to the embassy, and there was, maybe they gave them matzahs, maybe, but that was it, So these guys wrote a letter to the Rebbe, and they wrote a letter telling the Rebbe that a lot of Israelis are in Kathmandu, and maybe it's a good idea to send shluchim. That letter, the Rebbe forwarded it to Rabbi Castell from Tzach in New York. and the next year, his son, Mendy, who is basically the source for the story, this is where I heard it from, Rabbi Mendy Castell. So he called his father and he told him that they're thinking to go somewhere for Pesach because the reason also for that is just another nekuda, that there was a chidus of the Rebbe with the chief rabbis of Israel in Memvov, I think this was, where the Rebbe suggested that they should arrange public seders for all the people who come from Russia. And so there the Rebbe pushes for public seders. It took a few years, and the Bochrim picked it up. And he talked to his father. His father told him, by Hashgacha Pratis, the Rebbe forwarded to me this letter about Kathmandu. So then they arranged this first Seder in Kathmandu. This is how they got the idea. And then the next year...
From Australia.
From Australia. So then that was Tovshin Memtes. And then the next year, Merkos was arranging it, and we were sent from New York. Now, how is this relating to what I'm about to say? Is that Sicha, Vayikra Tafshinun. So that Motzoi Shabbos is we were scheduled. We did fly to Nepal. That Motzoi Shabbos. Now the Sicha really is in response to, like you said, from this rabbi, what he said in Eretz Yisroel, which is he was berating the non-religious Jews. And the Rebbe was speaking. This was very passionate Sicha. And also I remember, like I told you before, I remember V'ato yochel atziloi. So here I remember when the Rebbe said, Jeder Ried was geht, heint auf der Welt is a Ud Mutzel Me'esh. That's such a shout the Rebbe gave. Ud Mutzel Me'esh. And the Rebbe says over there that every Jew today is a aid, is a testimony that there is a Kodesh Baruch Hu in the world, even if that Jew doesn't do any mitzvah. And so how could that guy or anybody speak against Yidden? Bechlal, how could they have the chutzpah? And the Rebbe brought many mekoyres over there, and he says, Amzu yotzarti li. That's the after. Amzu yotzarti li, tilosi yesaperu. So the Rebbe said, Amzu yotzarti li, as a Yid is there, yotzarti li, as a gate, a room, he does tilosi yesaperu. Yeah, he does already the Tehillah from the Meirshter, even if he doesn't do any mitzvah. So really, the Rebbe responded then to what he said in Israel. And then after the Slicha, the Rebbe got up to dance. And the nigun was, and the Rebbe got up. And it was an amazing dance. And I remember when the Rebbe got up to dance, I was thinking right away, somehow, I don't know, but just what I was thinking, that the dance is for us. Everybody thinks about themselves, right? The dance is for us because we're going on an amazing shlichus. I mean, it was crazy. I mean, nowadays we have Chabad houses all over and this and that, but back then, the only Chabad house in the Far East was in Hong Kong. Rabbi Avtzon, who was already there, Mordechai Avtzon. But, in Hong Kong, they don't have Israeli backpackers. So it wasn't really, I mean, it's in the Southeast Asia, but it's not the same category. We were going... There was no Chabad house in Thailand or in India or anywhere, and we were Bachrim too, which is, I don't know if we want to get into it right now, but, I'm 56 years old today. I'm thinking about it, with 3 Bachrim, 20 years old, was sent for like 2.5 weeks to Kathmandu. I mean, we were there. We did it, it was amazing. So
there's a documentary about it that I watched as a kid.
Yeah. There's movies, there's different things, there's, that I have.
It ends off with your wedding.
Oh, right. That's right. Listen, I'll show you something. Let me show you something here. I have this picture album. Okay. I'll just show you like, whatever. I mean, I'm not going to start showing you the pictures, but it's a picture album of, the first Seder we did in Nepal. It looks like this, something like that. Why am I showing it to you? Tell an amazing story. And then we'll get back to the beginning of the story. But we came back from Nepal and we made this album for the Rebbe with a duch. And got an answer from the Rebbe, the following words. Le'hachziro album ubetach yenatzlu la'asiyas magbiyois v'chayoyitze b'zeh azker l'tzion. So we were 3 bochrim. So I ran to Rabbi Kotlarski. And I told him, listen, the Rebbe gave a bracha for magbiyois with this album. He told me...
So the Rebbe says you could to fundraise with this album.
Yeah, that's what he said. And so I wanted to give it to Rabbi Kotlarski. He told me, what are you talking about? You guys wrote to the Rebbe. It's your answer. It's not my answer. So, and because from the three Bochrim, I didn't even make the album. Chaim Borchalevsky worked on this way more than me. But the reason it's in my possession is because I kept going. I went to Kathmandu for 7 different years. And so it's in my possession right here. And I got a bracha from the Rebbe for fundraising. I'm not really a fundraiser, but through the years, the bracha definitely came into, there's more to do. There's definitely more to do, but I could say that I had some fundraising miracles happen to me, and I attribute it to the Rebbe's bracha, obviously. But back to the Farbrengen, when the Farbrengen happened, I didn't think that the Sikha was relating to us particularly. I was thinking more about the dance. The Rebbe got up to dance. We were so excited that we're going to go on Shlichus for the Rebbe to such a place as Kathmandu. But years later, maybe I think 20 years after, I was learning the Sikha. I was then Shliach in Eugene, and I was just reading the Sikha, and all of a sudden it hit me that the whole Sikha, in addition to being a counter to whatever the rabbi said in Israel, but in that Sikha, the Rebbe really explains why he's sending us to Eugene, why he's sending us to Kathmandu. Because, a lot of people back then, we met people at the airports, and we told people we're going, the Rebbe send us to Kathmandu. They're like, why? Why does the Rebbe care that Israelis are traveling in the Far East? I mean, think about it. It's not like today. Back then, in 1990, whoever was in Kathmandu for Pesach, Israeli or Jewish, he wasn't planning to make a Seder. That was not part of their plan because they were in the Himalayas for Pesach. It's not like today, So we arrived there, and all those people.
It's not like today that it's part of. It could be part of their itinerary.
Right, but today it's like you find out where could you stay next to Chabad house. You already know that you're going. So therefore, a lot of people are traditional. They feel they could travel and then they could go to the Seder with Chabad. But back then, if you're there, you're not keeping Pesach basically. But everybody did come to our Seder. I mean, I don't think there was anybody there who heard about it who didn't come. So that was definitely an amazing, amazing event. But I'm saying in that Sikha, when the Rebbe says, Am zu yotzarti letilos yisaperu, who is he talking about? He's talking about those guys in Nepal, those Israelis that even though they're in Nepal, but tilos yisaperu, So it took me years to think in my own mind that the Sikha, in addition to being whatever the Rebbe said about what's going on in Israel, it was also a very major explanation of why is it that the Rebbe sends shluchim to run after those Israelis, So in that Sikha, the Rebbe lays this yisoid that, and that's something I say this to a lot of people, and even today, in Israel we have all this politics, and it's quite ugly, the lefties and the righties, and it's getting not so pretty. But something amazing? Anybody from those so-called extreme lefties, try to tell them that they're not Jewish. They're going to jump on you and they're going to say, I'm not Jewish. I'm more Jewish than you are. That's how people, in other words, they could argue with you about Tel Aviv and Shabbos and Chabad and this and that. But Jewish? Of course we're Jewish. And really, the Rebbe says in that Sikha that a Yid who goes around the world today, even if not doing any mitzvah, but the fact that he's a Yid, and this is not only relating to Israelis. I mean, also on campus and in America and anywhere, you meet a Yid. Are you Jewish? Yes. Once he tells you yes, we take it for granted, but saying I'm Jewish is already a connection, according to that Sikha, It's all, you're basically a aid of HaKadosh Baruch Hu auf der Welt. It's an amazing thing. So that Sikha definitely is remembered, and the dance afterwards, and then at the Seder in Nepal, I told everybody that before we left, we danced with the Rebbe, and I told everybody we taught everybody the nigun, and everybody was, there was definitely a big part of it. The war, the Gulf War, by the way, that there was. I was after that. I was a little bit shlichus in San Francisco, and in the Gulf War, at some point there was Rabbi Goldstein went by the Rebbe, and he asked the Rebbe if he should take a Megillah, And the Rebbe told him something like, by then you're not
Jacob
going to need it. Hey, he was going to Iraq. And the Rebbe said, something, by then you're not going to need it. Epes hazoi, right? So from that, there became some rumor that the Rebbe said that the war is going to be over on Purim. And amazingly, it was, So I remember
on Purim itself. Purim came in.
Purim, yeah. I remember it. I was in San Francisco in the middle of Purim. They said, "Oh, the war is over. The president is going to speak soon. The war is over." It was unbelievable, Yeah, the Gulf War was definitely.
1 second. So, like Nun Aleph.
Yeah.
Yeah, go ahead.
No, I just wanted to add one more thing, that I think the Gulf War is like a turning point in Eretz Yisroel for sure. When the Rebbe back then spoke about Eretz Yisroel being the safest place in the world, and this was definitely, it's a little bit similar to what happened in the 6-Day War, because in the 6-Day War, there was crazy fear in Eretz Yisroel, and the Rebbe in that famous Lag Boi Masicha, speaking about Eretz Yisroel, it was very positive. There's going to be miracles. In a similar fashion, a little bit different. In Israel, I wasn't in Israel, but my family was, and everybody knows there was a huge scare of chemical weapons, and they gave gas masks to everybody, and they taped the windows. There was like a whole procedure going on. Meanwhile, the Rebbe is saying Israel is the safest place in the world, and we know that the war had a lot of miracles. By the way, not to veer off, I'm just going to mention this, that I thought a lot about it during the last war we had right here in Israel, and I'm talking to you from Tzfas, and the war with Hezbollah, we had sirens every day over here, and a lot of people were scared. Obviously, a war is not a fun time, but for us, Chassidim of the Rebbe, remembering how the Rebbe said Israel is the safest place, and remember the Gulf War, he gave us a huge chizuk, to know everything is going to be okay. The Rebbe's words are, still there, and Eretz Yisroel is still Eretz Yisroel. Baruch Hashem, and we saw amazing things.
Yeah, right after October 7th, obviously on Lubavitch, but even beyond, in the Frum world in general, and maybe beyond that also, a lot of videos of the Rebbe were going around because people want to know they should pull their kids from out of yeshiva. October 7th, people want to know should they take their kids home from yeshiva or not send them. And a lot of the Rebbe's videos were going around. Chas v'shalom, you have to go to Eretz Yisrael, and you have to Chas v'shalom to bring your children back. And I think that was mechazik a lot of people way beyond Lubavitch. Those same videos from the Gulf War from Tafshin and Aleph.
Right, absolutely.
So Nun Aleph and Nun Beis, you're not in 770.
Well, I was in and out. Okay, so Tishrei, parts of Tishrei, Nun Beis for sure. I was there for Tishrei, and Nun Aleph. Excuse me. I was there for Chofches Nissen. I was there. Nun Aleph. I was Rechet to be there, and I was there in and out. So some for bringing the Yuchvad, I was there. Depends what it is. I spent a lot of time in Vancouver, British Columbia. I went on Shlichus over there by Rabbi Asi Weinberg, and then in San Francisco. I was spending in San Francisco by Rabbi Langer, Chabad of San Francisco. But yeah, I was depending what the event is, I was there.
Okay, so you mentioned Chavches Nissen. So maybe you want to describe a little bit. I mean, Nun Aleph, Nun Beis, the whole Koch, and the way the Rebbe was speaking about Mashiach. What do you want to say about that?
Yeah, there's definitely, things definitely changed. I can't tell you the exact point of where the change took place, but definitely we all know Nun Aleph and Nun Beis were different than the earlier years. In that, the Rebbe spoke mostly about Mashiach. Even certain Farbrengens even started Azev me gefintzach in Ikves dem Shiche. It's like the Farbrengen never started like that. Farbrengen would always be like.
The Rebbe would start Farbrengens in Nun Beis We have to start off in Inyan Shazman Grama, Bias
Yeah,
Mashiach
Bias
Tzidkenu.
Mashiach Tzidkenu, right? I mean, it's like the Mashiach ecstasy, if you want to call it that, was very, very strong. It definitely felt as if it's, as we say, any moment now. You know. Also, it was on the media. You know, it wasn't just in 770. Like I told you, I was in San Francisco back then, and this was all over the media. I mean, there were articles about it that the Rebbe says that Mashiach is coming. Shluchim were speaking on the media about it. I remember even in San Francisco, Rabbi Langer. I mean, this was like a big theme, and it definitely felt like it's any moment now. I mean, Chofretz Nissen was a big shock, obviously. I remember this very well. I remember like with the Rebbe speaking, and I mean, the Sikha is recorded. It's not a very long Sikha. Anybody, I mean, every year, I guess everybody watches it, so people know the Sikha. But if you watch it or listen to it from the beginning, not just from the moments when it gets really intense, but it's the Sikha starts like any other Sikha. It doesn't. You don't feel in the beginning everybody was standing in 770, listening to the Rebbe, and listening to the Rebbe, thinking it's like another Tuesday or whatever it was. But then, just the tone changed, and the Rebbe said be'emes things that were very hard to hear. Ich hab schon alles getan, and what else can I do? Things like that. And
Everything I've done till now is Lehev Valerik.
Level Valerik, right? I mean, that was terrible to hear those words. I mean, that was like not easy to swallow, and yeah, and it definitely also created, in 770, people for bringing all night and what should we do, and the whole, the whole Mashiach situation basically developed from there. I don't know. Listen, we definitely, I would say, from today's perspective, there's no question that in the Rebbe's sichas and the Rebbe's view, we got to be on, any moment now. This is it. There's no other thing to think about. Now, there was already like, I don't know, 35 years, whatever, how many years it is. Okay, so there's no answer for it. In other words, I don't feel, I don't know what to say about it. I told you, the Rebbe wrote me a letter personally. V'anu en lanu, ela nesidoreinu. That's it. The Rebbe is adrabah. If 30 years ago the Rebbe said Mashiach is, imminent, then how much more imminent is it right now? And the thing is, I got to say, for those who, it's not easy to accept maybe what I'm saying to everybody at any moment, but the reality is that the world around us is supporting that, because we see, I mean, at least I see it in Eretz Yisroel. 30 years ago when you told people that the Rebbe is saying Mashiach is coming any minute, I don't recall everybody being agreeable to it. I actually recall people not, I'm talking about, not unsere, I'm talking about the world, Yidden, and people were like wondering what that means. Well, today, in Eretz Yisrael for sure, most people you talk to, they told you, listen, Mashiach has to come. There's no other solution. Mashiach has to come. So we see that the message is any moment any day that goes by, that question that the Rebbe asked back then, "Vi kumt es bichlal as Golus is still here?" That question just became stronger. So the message is more relevant. We have a question. How could it be that 30 years went by? And okay, it's a good question. I'm not. I also have the same question, but the question doesn't make me change my mind about it. It just makes me think even stronger that it must be that that Mashiach is coming. But there's definitely the in those years the to go excuse me, to go from Nun Aleph Nun Beis to switch to Chof Zayin order and then to Gimmel Tammuz. Obviously, that was a pretty complicated time. I mean, it still is, but back then it was felt even stronger. So, every generation has its challenges, I guess. On the other hand, I mean, the Rebbe also, like I said before, the Rebbe did say the Sikh of Bo Nachshav Cheshbono Shel Olam. The Rebbe did say the Sikh of Chofetz Nissen. I mean, whether we like it or not, he did say it. So, here we are. I think the kunt is that here we are, and even though we have a lot of questions, and even though we have situations we are not so thrilled about, we see that the Rebbe's message gets stronger, and Chassidim are here, and here we are sitting and talking about the Rebbe. I mean, the Rebbe is definitely stronger. So
you have less questions now than you did the day after Chav Zayin Adar Gimmel Tammuz.
I think so. Yeah, I think I don't know. I don't know if less questions is the words I would choose to describe the difference between how I feel now and back then, but I would definitely say, and I'm saying also openly, and I told you before, I don't come from Lubavitch, so definitely after Gimmel Tammuz, I felt it. I felt it already after Chav Zayin Adar, that people who had like a family support system or something more personal, they had their approach. I didn't have any. I didn't put any money on the stocks of Lubavitch. You know what I'm saying? I came from the outside, and I came for the Rebbe. I didn't care about the Crown Heights or Mishpoches or this, that. I don't want to say names, but you know what I'm saying? Like, I wasn't part of it. Still not part of it. I came for the Rebbe. So if the Rebbe is gone, or seems to be gone, or whatever I want to call it, then okay, gotta go. I'm not interested. So that's how I felt back then. I felt like, I'll say honestly, if I wouldn't dream that Chabad Lubavitch would be so strong so many years after Gimmel Tammuz. You ask me that Gimmel Tammuz, I wouldn't put my money on it. Really, I thought it's so. Yes, for sure. In real time back then, I was way more disoriented and depressed and all, whatever you want to call it. Now, so many years went by. Yeah, so the time part of it, like I said before, I don't have an explanation. I don't know. The time we're in, I have a big question mark. How is it possible that the world is there?
Which that's a lashon that the Rebbe used many times. That there is no explanation why
Right.
Mashiach did not yet come. That's what the Rebbe said
Exactly.
in those sichos and often the base. The Rebbe would say that all the time.
Exactly. So
Right.
if they ever said it back then, what are we doing in Teivov? Wie kommt es? Man hört nicht am Rebbe, Mashiach is not. I don't know. I have no idea how to explain such a thing. It doesn't make any sense to me. But what I could say is that I do see that since then, contrary to my own personal assessment, not to mention other people, the Rebbe
Yeah,
is,
I would say you and others.
yeah, listen, but the Rebbe is so much stronger. So many more people in my own family, even. I told you I had with my parents and everything. My mother told me a while ago, with my mother, she's telling me, I couldn't believe she's telling me. She said, you know what? Alavai, all my kids should be Chabadnikim, not just you. Talking about my brothers, whom she loved. But my mother calls me. She said, I saw an amazing gem movie today. I want to share it with you. And my mother was so angry that I went to Chabad. You have no idea. I'm not going to get into it now. And she probably wouldn't want me to talk about it. But I'm telling you, that's what it was. So I see it with my personal family. I see it with people around. People, in shul, I go to shul. People who are not Chabad are telling me, the Rebbe saw it all. The Rebbe is so right. What would the Rebbe say? What does the Rebbe say? So when you see that the Rebbe is so much more relevant now than ever before, then the kashas about Mashiach, we have kashas, but the Maisa, we see that so many people are drawing inspiration and chizuk from the Rebbe's Torah, and it's just getting so much stronger that. So definitely, I'm less confused. I'm still a little bit confused. I won't tell you I'm not, but it's definitely less than how I felt right then. For sure. It's a different world.
Mm-hmm. Okay. So I think we should do what the Rebbe wants from us, and we should actually take care of all the sveikas and tishbi taretz kushis v'abayis, and it should be as Mashiach Sakena b'peil mamish. We won't be any questions.
Amen. Teichef u'miyad. B'korov mamash.
Okay, Yashakech, Rabbi Asi, very geschmack, and you should have a lot of hatzlach in all of the shlichus that you do in Eretz Yisroel and beyond.
Amen. Thank you very much, and hatzlach rabba in your inyonim. Thank you.